Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of the Facade Focus podcast, where I aim to connect the global facade industry by sharing knowledge and experience for others to learn from. Over the coming weeks, I'll be interviewing leaders and industry experts across the globe to discuss common problems people are facing and explore the innovative solutions that will help you in your learning journey. This week, I'm joined by Anthony Sertorio, Technical Solutions Executive at Autodesk. Now, Anthony brings a really unique blend of construction experience and digital innovation. Having worked on major projects in Australia and the US, he's now helping leading engineering and construction firms unlock the full value of their data. From his early days on site to shaping digital strategies at Autodesk, Anthony's passionate about bridging the gap between traditional construction and emerging tech. In this episode, we dig into why most construction data goes unused, how better data strategies can drive smarter decisions, and how AI and automation are changing the way the industry works faster than ever. We also discuss how companies can start small, experiment without overwhelm, and get directionally correct without turning into a tech company overnight. So if you're thinking about digitization, automation, or how to use your project data more effectively, this one's packed with ideas to help you take that first step. Now, a quick shout out to our sponsors of the podcast, which is Architectural Glass and Aluminum, otherwise known as AGA. They're a leader in custom curtain wall systems and have been providing tailored glazing solutions for over 55 years. More impressively, they are one of the largest employee-owned businesses in the glazing industry across the US and have a phenomenal team that buys into their ethos of collaboration and craftsmanship. I'm delighted to have them as a partner of the pod, so a big shout out to the team over there. In the meantime, let's get into this week's episode of the Facade Focus podcast with Mr. Anthony Sertorio. Anthony Sertorio, welcome to the Facade Focus podcast. Great to have you.
Thank you, Tom. Great to be here.
Absolutely. So I've given you a bit of an introduction already, but in typical Facade Focus fashion, give us a bit of a rundown as to where you've come from, the journey you've been on so far in the industry, and what you're doing now.
Yeah, too easy. So, Tom, I guess I began my career originally back in Perth in WA. That's my hometown. I studied engineering over there, structural engineering. And I began working for one of the tier one contractors in Australia called Multiplex. They've got a global presence as well, so you may be aware of them too.
Yeah.
And after a bit of time, I became involved in their engineering and innovation team, which basically focused on value engineering, but also things like software development, and even back then a little bit of AI. Wow. As well. So I actually moved with that team to Sydney and then also to New York for a little bit of time. And right. Like I say, that was probably my introduction to stuff outside of just engineering and construction, more on the machine learning and software side. Yeah. And then I moved back to Melbourne for a little while, back onto projects, and eventually transitioned over into Autodesk, where I've been for about 3 years. So my role here is a technical solutions executive, which basically means that I work with some of the large construction and engineering companies in Australia, working through their technical strategy, understanding their challenges and goals, and trying to link them up to the rest of the big Autodesk network and bring solutions to those challenges. I didn't really realize until I came into Autodesk just the breadth of the company.
Yeah,
it's not just the AutoCAD and Revit, Navisworks kind of company. We think of it in terms of the three pillars. So we have architecture, engineering, and construction, manufacturing, and then media and entertainment, which is things like all your movies and Netflix shows.
Yeah.
So anything that's in that virtual space of the design. All their software really touches, and we follow that right through from designing through to making, which is the construction side and manufacturing as well. So, yeah.
Wonderful, love that. So there's interesting journey you've been on so far. I've got to ask you, obviously from Australia, and you ended up in New York. How did you find that? Sounded like it was a short stint, but I imagine it was pretty cool.
It was probably too short, but it got a huge experience out of being in New York.
Yeah,
Such a massive contrast to where I was originally from in Perth.
yeah,
Just
yeah.
the scale of the two cities. But yeah, I mean, I love New York as a city. It's just so full on, so vibrant. So yeah, it was a really great time.
Awesome. And did Multiplex have any operations over there? I know they're obviously huge across Australia, Middle East, Europe. Did they have operations over there?
Yeah, so Multiplex are owned by a parent company called Brookfield.
Yep. Yep.
And so they're an asset management company, and their offices are centralized in New York and then also in Toronto, where Multiplex does have offices. So there was
Right.
some of that work was also for that parent company, Brookfield, and you can imagine that was a bit earlier in the stage of projects where they were going through feasibility or they were working out that as the developer side
Yep.
rather than the actual builder.
Wonderful. Very cool. Well, I know we spoke off camera a little bit about the problem that we're going to highlight here, and I'm excited to get into this because I think um, one, I resonate with the problem, and I think a lot of people will. They won't know where to start with it. I think there's probably a couple of um, not issues, but hurdles that people have got to overcome to start really getting into what you're going to talk to us about today. One, I think, is just being open minded and sort of lowering the barrier to um, how scary slash confusing it might be to sort of get into all this stuff. But give us a bit of a flavor as to what you see in the industry from your side at Autodesk, the problem that we're looking to solve.
Yeah, I think there's some pretty well established challenges and needs in the whole of the construction industry, which maybe I'll speak to that more generally. And I think a lot of it's applicable to the facade industry as well.
Yeah,
We've been through a long journey of digitization, taking processes which were paper based or manual and putting those into digital systems. And as a result of that, we're producing more data than ever within construction. And there's ways to utilize that information to and have an opportunity to provide real value. But there's also a sense that we haven't quite got there. We haven't really been able to yet take full advantage of all that information and maybe even understand the full scale of the information that is now at our fingertips. If you look at other industries like, say, finance, which have had a much longer history of having
yeah,
that kind of digital thread of information, they've been a lot more forward-leaning and a lot quicker to see some of those benefits and real big changes in the industries as well. So the underlying challenge is really that accessibility of the information. There was a report a few years ago that said about, I think it was 96% of information in construction goes unused. So
wow,
it's a huge amount of potential there, which we're really not tapping into. And look, I think that's either because people are not technical enough to take advantage of that information, or
yeah,
it's locked up in design files because maybe it's in a 2D CAD file, which there's not really any way of linking that to anything else and utilizing the information. It's kind of just a 2D drawing,
yeah,
or it's poor quality or just incomplete. So either way, that's difficult to get any real insights and information out of that kind of information. Um, yeah, so the information, I guess it can be valuable in a few different ways, like say in benchmarking against previous projects, because then
yeah,
we're able to better compare drawings or project correspondence from previous projects to what we're looking at building now.
yep,
In making decisions, for example, maybe you're updating a schedule and you want that previous project information to be able to inform what you're doing.
yep,
And I guess just overall in being more proactive, right? Like being
yeah,
able to have that knowledge to get ahead of the issues that may come up with a
yeah.
project.
Yeah, I think getting ahead probably sounds like a good start, isn't it? Just looking back at previous data sets from historical projects and, you know, I assume,
Mm.
correct me if I'm wrong, the starting point isn't to let the last projects dictate exactly what you're going to do on the next project, but it might get you 40% of the way there, and then that's your starting base for the next project. You're kind of looking back to improve where you start from, as a base point for the next project.
Yeah, I mean, a big challenge for that is finding the relevant information and knowing how it's different because each construction project's different as well, right?
Yeah.
So, how do we correlate maybe several different examples that have one final recommendation where that's not something that's kind of intuitively easy to do.
Yeah.
AI probably has the potential to help with that kind of challenge, but
Yeah.
also because the challenge is difficult and because AI itself can appear complicated, it can feel like there's a really massive barrier to entry there.
Yeah.
And look, a lot of the time that's probably correct. Uh, the opportunity starts to lie in having your structured information, having ways of taking advantage of that, and having things like your data strategy in place to be able to leverage new ways of working.
Data strategy. I love that. Yeah, because in interpreting the data is one thing. Having the data is one thing. Actually
Hmm.
interpreting and being able to put it to good use is a completely different thing. So interesting. You mentioned data strategy. What are you seeing as successful firms are doing, about their data strategy, and what could be included in that? What should people be as a very entry level point to starting to look at putting together one? What could they be considering?
Yeah, we're just thinking about some of the companies that I work with and what they how they approach this. It is a holistic approach. It's understanding all those different kinds of data sources, and it's not always including every one of them in some big database. It's finding the opportunities where processes maybe don't result in the data outputs that we need, and also understanding what the relevant metrics and relevant pieces of information are that need to be utilized. So that might look like things such as a content library for previous designs,
Yeah, yeah,
which can then be reutilized on new projects. It might look like just taking project reports into something that is not just an Excel sheet, but we can actually track between different revisions. We have a more live view. Definitely the ability to I guess, report across an entire portfolio of projects rather than just on an individual project is a big thing because that gives executive level insights, which can then be actioned at an organization level
yeah,
rather than just at the project level. And again, like having a standard data form, which means that I can compare one project that's live to another one, that becomes a real key to that because otherwise every project is just reporting separately and not really
yeah.
comparable.
That's interesting. So I'm hearing that having a pretty clean data strategy could also lead to better decisions at executive level, and maybe even influence strategy as a whole as a business on, maybe what we should be doing, where we should be targeting, in terms of projects, in terms of maybe even size, maybe even the types of systems, the buildings, everything. If you can actually interpret historical data, that could open up some answers that could
Mm.
improve your future business plan. So looking at, again, the data sets you're talking about, talk to me a little bit about the Autodesk tools that are available to these companies. You mentioned obviously AutoCAD, Revit, Navisworks. For someone that's just operating in, let's say, they're operating in 2D at the moment. They've got a bunch of historical projects. What can they be doing just as a very entry level point, just to sort of get the ball rolling into all of this?
Well, I might just pick up on something that you're saying as well there just before, Tom, in terms of the organizational data. It's been said a couple of times that data is the new oil.
Yeah,
And For construction companies, as I say, there is so much data that's being produced that there is a real potential for differentiation and for being able to have a competitive advantage by doing some of the things that you're talking about, by having those insights, by being able to better, say, tender for jobs or deliver jobs. So that's 100% correct. In terms of what companies are currently doing now, say they're very early on in that, what we would call like a digitization journey,
Yep.
or transitioning from some of those kind of legacy ways of working. I mean, obviously having, parametric BIM-based models, which we're able to work with on a more intelligent level, which can produce a more rich and useful set of information out of the model. That's going to be really helpful.
Yep.
Having all that information organized, and even if it is within a program like AutoCAD and we're working in 2D, you can still be working with standard sets of information, standard blocks, standard ways of drafting, which can help there too. Where Autodesk is going with this, and how they're trying to enable some of the solution to the problems that we're seeing, is by making the data that sits within models and sits within designs more accessible, more granular, and also more interoperable. So you can see some of the effort towards that with tools like the AC data model, which Autodesk are working on and is accessible as an API. Which basically means that programmers can get in there, access the data that sits within a model, and do so in a really targeted, specific way. So we can be really efficient with how we're getting that information. We have it in a standard, structured way, and then we can use it in different applications as well. So that's where a lot of Autodesk effort is going towards. And because, like I said earlier, Autodesk spans kind of the entire project life cycle from like early concept design right through to construction, manufacturing, and then into operations, that can help to create that whole digital thread that exists between all those different stages, and really, I guess, reduce the amount of information loss that we've got going between different stakeholders. So, that might look like a facade designer who's able to collaborate better with an architect, who's able to, specify their products directly from what they're actually able to manufacture.
Yeah. I love that. So, is that labor intensive? What I know, you talked about the programmer being able to go in there and look at the API and how that all plugs into the different tools. Do you need someone on staff to do that? Could you outsource that from a programming perspective? Is it heavy lifting in terms of all of the programming, or is it pretty intuitive and quite
so
low level on the labor side?
There are some requirements behind that, like technology in terms of what programs need to be used for that. That's heavily based on Revit at the moment, which is widely used across the industry, but also expanding those kind of capabilities to other sets of products potentially in the future.
Yeah.
The I guess overall strategy with that AC data model is to expand the accessibility and use cases to other functions.
Yep.
But in terms of using it now, there is a I guess perception that doing anything with data, and especially then going into AI, can be very very manually heavy, very difficult for somebody who's not familiar with programming, familiar with coding. Look, as I said, in my background, I don't actually have a software engineering background at all, coming from structural engineering. And so I don't claim to be a programmer or of any real skill in that respect at all.
Sure.
But what I can say is that there is so many tools out there now that are enabling non-developers to to actually take advantage of the same kinds of resources that a coder would do
Yeah.
historically. So that might be things like low code solutions. So ACC, Autodesk Construction Cloud, has an add-in to that called Autodesk Construction Cloud Connect, or ACC Connect, and that's a low-code platform built on top of Wacado, which again is a low-code kind of tool. And that basically allows somebody who isn't familiar with APIs, isn't familiar with programming, to go in there, basically use drop downs to select different parameters, and then set up an interface with the APIs, which give you access to all that data that sits underneath the models and underneath the Autodesk platform. So it is much more accessible than what probably is sort of at first pass.
Yeah.
And ACC Connect is just one of many different tools and different ways of getting into that data. I think that's becoming more and more accessible, to be honest.
So do you think a high-level designer or an engineer in one of these businesses who's got a good enough skill set, or they're proficient in Revit, AutoCAD, they know how to navigate these tools? You think they've got enough technical understanding of how those programs work to be able to go into that, that side of the low code programming side, and kind of, have a look around and figure it out? It's quite intuitive in that sense.
Yeah, I look, as I say, I actually am probably even less skilled than most of those people at the tools that you're talking about in the actual design and things like ACC in some cases. So yeah, definitely having that base level of understanding of the tools themselves is going to help. You're going to have an intuitive feel for
Yeah.
those things. But yeah, I mean, low code solutions, I've seen customers build out at a very simple level things like, send me a notification when a certain activity occurs within my project and include that information, or go the other way, take information that I've got from external sources and upload it to my project, so it's all sitting in the right spot and it's all related to the right information in there. I guess the other aspect that's making things more and more accessible, and it's been going around quite a bit recently, called like vibe coding, or
Yeah.
basically having AI help you to program something just by having a vague understanding of what you want to have as the end product. And I think there's a great place for that. Where I've found it really helpful with the resources that Autodesk has is there's really great documentation, which means that if an AI is going in and doing some of that program, creating some kind of custom program for me, I've got a good starting point to point it to say, hey, this is how things should actually work.
Yeah.
And then a lot of really good code examples, which, to be honest, just even having that as the starting point and say, well, change this so that when I select a model, it does something else rather than what it currently does.
Yeah.
That's really possible as well. So that's probably a little bit more effort, but I think it's only trending in one direction, like becoming more and more accessible and more capable.
So you mentioned there, touched on it, a couple of bits where we're looking at potentially automating repetitive tasks and using, the tools available to you to find the repetitive tasks that are manual. What could people be thinking about on how to get going with that? And also, where do you see the repetitive tasks within these workflows that you think could be automated, or are being automated?
Yeah, I think a really good framework to think about AI and automation more generally is around, are there tasks that you might have historically given to, say, a cadet to perform, which are either very much like manual data entry, or they are things like, say, a quantity takeoff.
Yeah.
Things that are very time consuming, but potentially they don't provide a lot of value versus that time that's spent on them.
Yeah.
And then, consider, well, is this a task that has a very defined and specific answer If it is, maybe like a conventional kind of automation is actually going to be more appropriate because
Yep.
AI models at the end of the day they're based on probabilities. They're based on trying to think of what the likely answer to something is, not just taking a piece of data and analyzing that specifically. So uh, yeah, thinking about like, is this challenge that we have something where it's very well defined? We have a data set which just needs to be manipulated by, because somebody say do this by using a calculator, then well, a computer can use a calculator already, really.
Yep.
But is there people that maybe can't interact with the software that already exists, and we would like to give them an interface that makes it more accessible to them through natural language? Like that's
Yep.
a real possibility as well now. So those kind of tasks. I mean, as one example, when I was back in construction, used to spend it was hours every month taking reinforcement delivery dockets
Yep.
and manually entering all the information on them into a spreadsheet. Just not a lot of fun, not very efficient at all. Prone to my human error.
Yep.
And I probably spent, I don't know, a couple of months here and there knocking up a code to be able to script that and
Yep.
take these dockets and import them. It wasn't using AI or anything like that, but it was reliable enough on one project. But if I took that to another project, it's just going to break because the format of a docket's going to be different.
Sure.
That's probably a really good example of where AI can provide the kind of stopgap that the missing link in the chain that we didn't have before.
Yep.
Where like even the low code automation can probably do a lot of that kind of work in setting up and maybe work in tandem with AI. But yeah, there's like a whole heap of benefit in that kind of a task. And look, it wouldn't have been possible for me to build something that's robust and actually works well compared to what I could do now.
100%. And one thing that always gets me thinking in terms of when you look at tools, when you look at digitization, is the investment cost and the time cost as well. So, when you look at moving into maybe a BIM transformation throughout your company, and you're looking at, okay, cool. So we want to, set up the families, and we want to, make it all, talk to each part of the business, and you've got that upfront time investment to sort of lay the foundations, and the investment in terms of the software, the human hours. Um, Talk to me a little bit about, from your perspective, which is obviously from the Autodesk side, um, people that may consider, hey, look, this is just too much time and cost for the benefit that is being not claimed but being set out. How would you not rebut that, but how would you answer that to people that may be of that thought process?
Yeah, I heard something recently about AI is changing how fast it's possible to move, and AI is also changing how quickly you have to move, like to
Yeah.
keep up with that pace of change. So, uh, even putting AI aside, I'm a really big believer in, I guess, experimentation, both for individuals and for organizations, and kind of taking an iterative approach to gaining lessons. I don't think organizations should just be going out there and completely, trying to remake their entire business when they haven't even worked out what some of those basics are. Because, like I say, there definitely is benefits of just being able to get those processes and data management down packed.
Yeah.
But assuming that is in place, then like I say, the rate at which you can try things and iterate and get feedback and develop new processes is just so much faster now. There's so much risk in not being able to keep up with that pace of change and so much opportunity to discover and find efficiencies. That's the way that I would be thinking about it. And again, the analogy is shooting bullets, not cannonballs, trying to calibrate things by learning and understanding. And maybe that means getting tools into the hands of people that are closer to the problems themselves. So again, like that democratization of the actual solutions. I think it's the Wicado CEO who actually has a book about, and in part, about that democratization of automation, getting it to people who are close to the problems that they can actually build a solution, even if that's a proof of concept, but potentially that becomes more organizational as well. So that's the way I would be thinking about it, and making smart investments in areas that can be of benefit.
Yeah, going to the people that are closest to the problem, it affects them daily, doesn't it? So that there is a clear pain point for them, that they're having to do this, deal with it, try and figure out, like, there has to be a solution to this. And they're probably going to be, let's be honest, the most open-minded or curious to actually implementing something to start with, aren't they? And once they've proved that, that can then be rolled out to other people within that department. That then becomes a little bit more successful. Those workflows start to get dialed in, and then other people from other departments then come and want to look and see, and how did you do that? And then, suddenly you've got, wider company buy-in into utilizing these tools, I think.
Yeah, as I say, you probably do want to have a framework to have those people who are experimenting work to a certain way. I was probably going a bit rogue when I was back in construction, and just going off script a bit, and building up Power BI dashboards with the stuff that no one was asking for, but maybe they're going to be interested in. So having a bit of governance around it and thinking about that, because maybe there are people who are going to do that regardless, but you can point them in a better direction, in a more positive direction for the overall company.
100%. And I also do think there's value in what you were doing in terms of just going around and figuring it out. And sometimes having a framework is obviously important as to, what are we even looking to get out of this? Which direction should we sort of be looking in to start with, just to make sure you're on that path. This episode is brought to you by Architectural Glass and Aluminum, otherwise known as AGA. Looking for a trusted glazing partner? AGA has been working alongside industry leaders for over 55 years, providing reliable and high-quality glazing solutions. Specializing in Class A office buildings, hospitals, airports, and higher education, AGA creates custom curtain wall systems tailored to your project needs. With a focus on collaboration and craftsmanship, AGA is here to support your next project. So visit aga-ca.com to learn more about their services and capabilities. That's aga-ca.com. Now back to this week's episode. I wouldn't even be opposed to just having someone that's going in there, similar to what you did, and just trying to figure things out. Because I think sometimes you learn better that way, whereas you've not got a set expectation what you're trying to get out of it, which is probably the complete opposite of what you'd suggest. But I kind of like the idea of someone, going in there and, sort of rummaging around and figuring out things. And then I think that would then provoke thought as to how things could come together, and maybe different ideas and what could be tailored to exactly what they need. But also at the same time, maybe having someone that is going down a more structured framework as to what you want.
I guess I agree with that, Tom. And just additionally, you want to have that governance in terms of, if we're dealing with, what would you call it? Like company data, we want to have some kind of controls over who can do certain things with it. Maybe having some kind of accessibility there as well. Especially we're saying then going to AI and where that data ends up going to. So there's some controls over it, and then having people have access to the right technology, having them be able to do that kind of experimentation in the context of, well, these are the systems that our business are using.
Yeah.
and not end up with an array of 500 different applications because this thing allowed me to connect into this, which allowed me to do something else, and it's like
Yeah.
that's not scalable on an enterprise level. We're kind of back to square one. So let's do it in a structured way. Let's do it in a more planned way.
Yeah. 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 You don't want 53 tools trying to talk to each other that there's one sort of break in the cycle and then suddenly nothing else works.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one thing I do want to touch on, I've seen your posts from what you're working on in terms of ChatGPT and integrating how that works. I don't know much about what you're trying to do, but I've seen and read a couple of your posts. Um, what are you doing with that at the moment with ChatGPT and the tools you're using?
Well, it's a lot of what we've been talking about, really. I mean, I'm following the curiosity and that kind of learning in different areas as new opportunities for building things come alive.
Yeah.
I'm at heart, like I said, I couldn't stop myself from building things when I was back in construction, and can't stop doing it now either.
Yeah.
And look, really just wanting to show that uh, there is a lot of ability to build things with the AI tools that exist out there. The big takeaway that I do try and give people when I'm talking with them about it is, look, this is all being built based on the APIs that exist for the AI tools, which are accessible. In some cases, they've got fees associated with them, but
Oh,
for proof of concept stuff, a few cents is nothing crazy, and just showing that the kind of solutions that can be built with them are really weren't possible previously. So, like, some of the stuff I'm looking more into now is how to get better results with the organizational data and with project data, and combining that back into say, like, our model and design data. We can gain better insights out of that. I think there's a really big potential for AI to take those kind of disparate data sources and link them up into getting better project insights.
yeah.
So whether that's something like, I'm raising a piece of correspondence on a project, and it's able to detect that I've got an issue that sits somewhere else that might be related to that, or a certain documentation that sits in our organizational knowledge base might be relevant to that as well. So yeah, there's a lot of I guess focus of mine in being able to better understand that. I think a lot of opportunity there as well.
Yeah.
Um, and that's why I say to customers I work with too, that there's some big partners out there and big companies that are working on these kind of tools and solutions, which are giving a whole heap of power to companies to leverage,
Yeah.
and trying to understand that, be it through talking to your vendors like Microsoft, and understanding what their whole cloud platform looks like, because most companies are sitting in there in some way, or speaking with Autodesk, and understanding our platform and data capabilities that sit within that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is creating a new set of capabilities for people in companies, and AI is just one block in that overall puzzle, really.
Yeah, yeah, and look, I obviously don't use the tools myself, and I may be way off with this, but it's just something I've dreamt up in my head. But when you talk about, a very sort of base level of, your tools and ChatGPT, I've got in my mind, it- are you asking it questions and it can reason answers based on like previous current projects, almost like it's a human, your own sort of like
Mm.
human assistant that can sort of go in there, dig around, and provide you an answer to the question you've asked it, but also then reason it as to, you know, presenting findings, suggesting solutions, or suggesting a direction you can take to either fix the problem or enhance a
Mm.
certain part of the project, or am I, barking up the wrong tree there?
Yeah, look, I, I guess ChatGPT probably shapes people's perception of what AI is
And
to
I
a large
spent far too much
extent.
time in it. Like, that's probably the
Don't worry,
problem.
you're not alone. But the capability, like I would say to anybody who's interested in looking into this kind of stuff, go on to, say, Google has their AI Studio, which is
Yep.
just a website where you can go onto and interact with the models that exist on there as well. And that's a lot more kind of customizable than your experience with ChatGPT is going to be. And it's kind of the door into, okay, well, what can I do with these kind of models, and where can I then take this? And think about like the other modalities that you have with the models as well. So whether that's video capabilities, whether that's image capabilities too. There's a lot more than just the I guess text capability. Even if you just started
Yep.
to think about, well, maybe I can start to interact with my project data on site through a voice interaction, because historically that's been quite difficult to use like your mobile to bring up some information in some cases. So
Yep.
maybe that augments some of that information that you're getting out on site as well. So I think in terms of a whole range of different ways to interact with AI. Um, but to bring it right back to what you were saying, yes, like interacting with your project data through I see that as being the uh, basically a new kind of interface for people who maybe aren't as technical, who don't have the experience with tools to be able to query and manipulate models, for instance, to
Yep.
get that information out and to make it more timely and more relevant to them, whereas they would have needed somebody else to kind of assist them, or serve that up to them, or they wouldn't have the information at all previously.
Yeah. No, I love that. I think it's just keeping it moving in the right direction, isn't it? And some people are out there, and I know they're going to be thinking, AI, and AI is obviously the buzz word.
Hmm.
And I just hope that people are open minded enough just to, go and look into it, go and consider how it could be a good use case in your own business. Where could you start with it, and just be directionally correct. You don't have to get to the end point. Just move in the right direction towards it. And you made a great point. It's still a moving target. I must have said this about 4 times on this podcast already, but it is a moving target, and it's a faster moving target than we've ever seen. AI. It develops at such a speed that these really, even with basic stuff that I'm using like ChatGPT, even their updates are coming at stupid rates and speeds, and you get another tool, and then suddenly you've figured out how that tool works, and suddenly another one drops, and that now changes the way you might look at this, or you could utilize it for a slightly different area of the business. So I think just being directionally correct, and taking steps towards digitization, I think that's the key part, right?
And and just understanding that each business is different, each process is different, and to apply any kind of improvement or solution, AI or automation, or whatever it is, understanding what that challenge is to begin with is really important. That's why I say, being really close to the actual the users, the people on the ground who are implementing that kind of work is super important, and getting their feedback. And then from that level of understanding, and hopefully from a level of competency with things like data, and having that platform to begin with, then looking at, all right, well, what's the right kind of solution to this? Is there somewhere where automation is going to provide value? Is there a certain aspect where AI is going to be able to provide value? And then implementing on that, but not just throwing AI as the silver bullet at every kind of problem, because in some cases it's going to be overkill. In some cases it's not going to give the best kind of result that's possible. And in some cases, maybe it should be used, but there's a whole heap of background work that we need to do to get the data where it needs to be as well.
Yeah, great point as well. Now, tell us about the outcome here. So we've looked at the problem, which is, look, there's tons of data out there, it's not being used.
Mm.
Solution, we've got tools, data strategy. There's low code solutions, automate repetitive tasks, gain predictive insights from projects, and then look at how you can use that for smarter decision making. When we're looking at organizations that are now going to embrace, as I think, as you put it, robust data practices, what are they going to see as a result of all of that? How does this all sort of come back together and benefit them as a company?
Yeah, I think I've touched on a couple of these points in terms of the data strategy allows things like the organizational insights. It allows us to make better decisions at that kind of level, and just to have like the lessons learned, and be able to be more proactive on projects. Construction projects, critical path is king. Being able to move quickly and make the right decisions that will advance that schedule is really important. Um, you know, Along with quality, safety, and all those kind of aspects as well. But being able to make decisions, being able to say schedule based on relevant information that we have at hand is really important. Um, yeah, and just being able to complete the kind of work which slows us down in a more seamless and more reliable way. So, reducing the kind of errors which are often caused by miscommunication. That's a
Yep.
massive thing which can just be solved by having that information shared and open and transparent.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just being able to have that information at the right time, to be able to make decisions which inform, say, what we're doing on site or what we're manufacturing, and having that flow through to not having the rework, not having the errors, and being able to deliver more quickly. There's a real pressure on, I guess, the skilled labor on projects, and then also the knowledge worker
Yep.
on projects, because that's been I think pretty universally difficult to continually find people to fill that. And we're not having the same kind of lifelong construction career people who maybe sit at the same manufacturing company for 40 years
Yeah.
and have all that organizational knowledge sitting with them. So, a big part of the net effect of this is by having that knowledge that would have typically sat within somebody's head,
Yep.
being able to express that and show it to people in ways that makes it useful to them. That's really powerful, because then you can start to at least augment or make up for some of the that expertise, which is really, really rare now.
Yeah, that knowledge transfer and knowledge share is so critical as well. So
Mm.
critical, because you think about, like you said, 96% of data on construction projects isn't used. Just imagine all the knowledge and wisdom and know-how sat in people's heads that isn't transferred down. And then when
Yeah.
they leave, like, then what? It all goes with them. And to have something that's systemized, process driven, that sort of takes it out of people's heads and can
Mm.
benefit the company long term, and actually have that information that you can then use, I think is also a protection against your business. It's
Yeah.
also future proofing your business. So yeah, it's really interesting take. I know there's no real, I don't think there's any end goal in sight with all of this, just because it's moving so quickly. But put you on the spot a little bit. Where do you see this going in the next sort of 12, maybe 24 months is irrelevant, because who knows where we're all going to be in 24 months. But where do you see this sort of moving to over the next sort of 12 months?
Yeah, 12 months is an interesting time frame. I think AI itself is going to move a long way in that time. And I think it's really important to remember that the the barrier to having some general purpose AI for construction is a lot of what we've talked about in having that data in the right way, not just from like let's say the construction companies who are building the jobs, but from the software companies like Autodesk who are developing the tools that are going to help to assist some of that as well. You know, there is a lot of work, and there's very few companies that are well placed to be able to develop those kind of tools based on
Yeah.
AI specifically for construction and engineering. Look, Autodesk have been working on that for a long time. I think our first research paper on generative AI was back in the late 2000s, and we've had an AI lab since again I think it's about 2017, 2018. So there's been a lot of effort towards that, and you see that in product features now. From an Autodesk perspective, we're going to continue to work on that, release more capabilities and features, which is going to be a real direct impact. And I think from a company perspective, a construction company perspective, uh, like I say, there's going to be more capabilities in AI. It's going to depend on if that's embraced
Yeah.
within an organization. It I do think that there is going to be more and more opportunity for uh, doing that in, I guess, maybe like a standardized offering kind
Yeah.
of way that things are going to become a bit clearer of what maybe that best practice looks like as well. But honestly, we're in a really early stage of a very long journey with AI, and what it looks like at the end of you know 2, 3, 5 years um, is really where it's going to be quite interesting. I think, as I say, the important thing for any company now is to take that kind of measured approach, be able to be abreast of what's happening, and be able to keep up with it with that pace of change. But not say, well, this year our focus is to just become an AI company, because that's going to be quite
Yeah.
disruptive.
Yeah, yeah, quite disruptive, and yeah, AI may be changing at light speed, but I think your business will be out of business quicker if you turn yourself into an AI company overnight.
Well, and remember, like in construction, it's very much based on human relationships and human interaction.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah,
that rate of change is maybe in some ways limited by that, or constrained by it. But that's a really important aspect to remember. So it's kind of going to be like, how does that get amplified and augmented by some of the tools and capabilities that we're seeing coming on? But yeah, that interaction between people and that kind of coordination side is, I think, still going to be completely key.
yeah. The people are the lifeblood of your business. I think using tools like this to just equip them with better data, not necessarily more data, but better
Mm.
data that they can just make smarter decisions. It's still going to be human led from, an external perspective. People buy from people, people interact with people, and people also don't buy from, logos. The people are what make up your business, and
Mhm.
they're tooled up with better data that allows them to make better and faster decisions. That can only be a good thing, and sets them apart. So yeah, I think you're right. This will still be a big influence. Is still going to be the human connection. It's just how do we equip them as best we can with all the tools that you're talking about here. So
Mm.
no, I love that, and I think that will resonate with people, and I hope it gets people thinking about how they can take a step forward in this direction, and just keep up with where the industry is moving and not get left behind. So I think we've had a pretty good run of being able to keep your business semi the same for a decade or so, not have to sort of be too innovative, and still win projects. I think certainly what I'm hearing in the market, the people I talk to, I think over the next 1 to 4, maybe 5 years, I think is where the people that are going to win are the ones that are going to embrace this sort of stuff in some form, as you said. Not a complete transformation, not trying to get to the end point overnight, but moving in the right direction and starting to implement some of this stuff. So,
Mm.
yeah, I know we could talk about this all day. I think you've done a great job of highlighting some common problems and some hurdles that maybe people think maybe they don't even know they need to overcome yet. So yeah, we'll move on to the quickfire questions. But look, thanks a lot for running us through that. I think that's going to be interesting to a lot of people.
Thanks, Tom. That was great.
Cool. Right, let's get into these quickfire Q&As then. So don't think too much. First answer that comes to your head, we'll fly through them. So favorite food?
Cool. I'll go traditional polenta, which is an northern Italian dish where my family's originally from.
Well, okay. Well, I got to ask a follow-up question to that then. So traditional polenta, which I'll be honest, I've maybe had polenta a couple of times. I want to say it was on some fries as well, but I'm sure I've had polenta fries as well. Like
Oh yeah, polenta chips. Yeah, that's the bomb.
yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah. So it's all comes from a specific area of Italy. Then it's like a
It
northern dish.
it's a very well. The version that I love is a northern Italian version, which is very heavy on like butter and cheese. So
Yes.
that's
Okay.
which is probably why I like it so much.
Yeah, I love that. Cool. What's your sports team?
Oh, AFL, Australian rules football,
Yeah.
uh, West Coast Eagles from Perth, where I'm originally from.
Very cool. Yeah. So for the people that don't know AFL, give us a quick overview of
Oh,
what that is. I've watched it a few times for entertainment purposes. I could not tell you what was happening, but as a sport to watch on TV, it was
I tell you what,
outstanding.
it's like rugby, but you can get tackled from every different direction, and you're trying to kick a
Okay.
ball through a goal like you would in, I guess,
Yeah,
Gaelic
yeah,
football.
yeah.
Yeah. So
Either goal, or it's directional, like
it's directional, but
okay.
somebody could come up from behind you and tackle you. Somebody could come from in front. Somebody could just give you a bump. Yeah, it's a very physical game.
Yeah. As I said, I've watched it a couple of times on TV, um, and yeah, it was highly entertaining. But yeah, I couldn't tell you what was going on. Cool. Okay. Favorite city and why?
Ooh, it's hard to look past Melbourne where I live because it's such a cool city, but I do love New York.
Yeah.
It's like I said before, it's just so uh, busy, so bustling, so much going on, and that's so different to what I grew up with.
Yeah, I love that. Favorite hobby?
I don't play enough of it, but tennis.
Nice. Yeah,
Yeah,
cool. Yeah, thinking of Melbourne right now. You're just coming out of your summer.
yeah, and just coming out of the Australian Open as well.
Yes, yeah, it's tennis season has kicked back off, hasn't it, with the
Hmm.
major tournaments. I don't keep up with it
Hmm.
as much as I used to. Always used to watch um, the major tournaments, if you like. I'm a golfer by background, so those big tournaments I like to watch. But no, very cool. So, talk to me about your favorite. You choose either, so book or movie. What's your favorite?
Ooh, I do love the book *Sapiens* by Yuval Noah Harari,
Yeah,
and that is because it does such a good uh, and entertaining job of being able to give a historical account of like how we got to now
yeah,
and why we're here now, and it was just a massive eye opener for me.
love that. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Oh, I think I've got this from a few different people, and it's the standard you walk past is the standard you accept. Actually, we had that up in the engineering innovations team. Our boss James had written that up on the wall somewhere.
Wow,
So you literally had to walk past it.
wow, I love that. I'm gonna think on that and use that. I think not heard that one before. You've had that from a few people, have you?
Yeah.
Yeah, great. If you could have dinner with any historical figure, who would it be and why?
Ooh, I hopefully he's a historical figure. He's a hysterical figure. Richard Richard Feynman. So listen to his audiobook of his stories. And so Richard Feynman was a physicist,
Okay.
and so really, really intelligent guy, really amazing at explaining very technical things, but also very, very funny, very, very entertaining. So I think that would just be an amazing night.
How did you stumble across him then? Was that just sort of doing?
Oh, well, uh, as with many good things, I think I was first introduced to him through that engineering group, and
Yeah.
then eventually got around to listening to this audiobook of all his different stories, and yeah, that was really yeah, very entertaining, like I say.
Yeah, I can imagine. What's the number one thing on your bucket list?
Ooh, probably keep it topical, maybe to get to all of the tennis Grand Slams.
Nice. How many have you
So
ticked off?
I've got 3 out of 4.
What's left on the list?
Just got the French,
The French. Okay.
which is apparently the hardest to get into as well. So
Oh, you joking. You've done
might
the
be
easy ones.
difficult.
You've got the hard one to come.
Well, I did the very easy one first, but yes,
Yeah, very cool.
stick
Good.
through them.
Yeah, nice. So if you could travel anywhere right now, where would you go?
Oh well, then I guess in line with that, I've got to say I'd want to go to Paris in May. So
Yeah, very nice. And if I could give you a mulligan, so a redo on any decision you've ever made, what would you choose?
hmm, I don't know if it's the decision, but maybe the approach when my wife and I were in New York, just maybe approaching that differently and being able to maybe appreciate how crazy it was that we were there,
Yeah,
and either I don't know, do everything that we could to stay there for longer, or I don't know, approach that differently and go, look, we know that this is going to be for a short time, and we should make sure that we meet people and experience things and take it in that way. I think we were just kind of blown back by it all, and it just went by so quickly.
yeah, I can imagine days just get eaten up there.
Mm.
There's so much going on, and you blink, and then suddenly it's over, and you're sort of coming out. I've yeah, it's one of those things. I find it here where I live, like days just seem to amalgamate into one. There's just so much going on. So no, that definitely resonates. And look, I appreciate your time here. This has been awesome. Very kind for giving me uh, an hour of your time. I said it'd be 40 minutes. So I'm clearly not getting any better at my management, but I am trying. So no, look, Anthony, it's been a pleasure. Thanks a lot for your time. I think this will be valuable for a lot of people.
Thanks, Tom. Really enjoyed it, and I hope it is.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, Anthony.
Thanks, mate.
Guys, that's it for this week's episode of the Facade Focus podcast, presented by me, Tom Caldicott, founder and CEO of Unity Search, where I help glass and metal businesses hire the best talent and build their brand on LinkedIn. Now, I've worked across Asia, the Middle East, Europe, and North America, and I'm on a mission to help connect each facade community to give you the tools to learn and grow. Now, I'm a big believer in sharing knowledge and provoking conversation, so I hope you take something valuable from each episode that gets you thinking about how you can be better tomorrow. Remember to like and subscribe the video on YouTube and give us a 5-star rating on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. It really helps us reach more people to achieve our goal of connecting the global facade industry. Tune in again for next week's episode, and I'll see you all there.